Hold the line! Push harder! Get those state charge! For the king! Forward! Stand firm!
October 25th, 1415. Northern France. Picture this. You are standing on a rain-lashed, muddy field at the crack of gray dawn, and across the valley, you see 25,000 French soldiers shimmering in armor worth a king's ransom. These are the dukes, the counts, and the barons, the very flower of French nobility. And they outnumber the small English force more than 4-1. They are rested, well-fed, and fighting on their own home soil, and they are about to execute an enemy so utterly exhausted they can barely stand. Now look at the English. 6,000 men, mostly longbowmen who are little more than peasants with wooden stakes and muddy boots, many of them sick with dysentery, many starving, and some who have not slept in days. Their king, Henry V, is young and feverish, and while the French lords are already dividing the English nobility as prisoners of war, a miracle is about to unfold that will change the course of history forever. By sunset, 10,000 Frenchmen will lie dead in the mud, including some of the most powerful nobles in all of Europe, while the English have lost perhaps only 400 men. Let that sink in for a moment. How did a starving, broken army break the finest knights in the Western world? One exhausted English soldier survived what 25 armored French knights could not, and something on that field dragged men under to their deaths. Longbowmen loosed so many arrows that the sky turned black, and Henry V utilized a tactic that looked like pure suicide because he was hiding a weapon the French were not ready for. The French thought they were charging peasants, but they were charging a lethal trap. Why did France walk straight into the deadliest choke point of the century? By the end of this video, you will know exactly how. To understand how an English army outnumbered 4-1 crushed France's elite, you need to understand the context of the struggle. For decades, England and France have been locked in a bitter struggle over crowns, land, and dynasties, what we now call the 100 Years' War, and this was not even supposed to be a major English campaign. By 1415, England was seen as weak, plagued by political coups and bankrupt kings. Yet one man dared to invade, Henry V. He was focused and deadly serious about restoring English honor, so he did the unthinkable by taking the fight to France in August 1415. He captured the port of Harfleur, but the victory came at a brutal cost, as disease tore through his ranks and supplies vanished. By October, retreat to Calais was the only sane choice, but France had assembled a juggernaut of 25,000 warriors ready to erase the English. This force included 10,000 knights, 4,000 mounted horsemen built for shock attacks, and thousands of heavy men-at-arms. They didn't just want to stop an invasion. They wanted revenge for the humiliations of Crécy and Poitiers from decades prior. On the night of October 24th, rain hammered the field of Agincourt, and the mud thickened into a glue-like consistency. The English shivered under soaked tents, starving and silent, while across the valley, the French nobles feasted on roasted meats and wine, laughing as they polished their armor for parade they expected the next morning. Henry gathered his captains and told them that if they were to die, they would die fighting. When dawn revealed the battlefield, Henry formed his men into a single narrow line between two dense forests, creating a natural bottleneck where French numbers could not wrap around them. He ordered his longbowmen to drive sharpened wooden stakes into the mud, angled like the jaws of a beast. Across the valley, the French deployed in massive waves, with 10,000 dismounted knights in the front line, but they were forced to fight on foot due to the deep mud and cramped terrain. The two armies stared at each other in a tense standoff until Henry made a move no one expected. He ordered his banners forward, and the longbowmen yanked their stakes from the ground, advanced, and drove them back in an ultimate insult. Then, Henry unleashed a surprise, archers hidden in the woods. A sudden storm of arrows began tearing into the French ranks, and French pride finally snapped. Someone in the front ranks screamed for a charge, and the French tidal wave began to move forward. On each wing, 2,000 mounted nobles surged first, but their horses slipped in the thick clay, and they galloped straight into a hurricane of arrows. Panicked riders crashed into their own infantry, wreaking chaos before the second line even joined the fight. The French front line of 10,000 knights pushed toward the English stakes, and while arrows did not always pierce their plate armor, they shattered joints and crushed windpipes. By the time the knights reached the English line, they were bleeding and exhausted. The trap snapped shut as English men-at-arms braced behind their stakes. striking downward at knights who were now trapped in a literal human crush. Then the second French wave of 6,000 men slammed into the rear of their own knights, but they did not reinforce the attack. They buried it. The French were literally crushing themselves to death. Henry saw the moment and whispered to his captains to hold their ground, letting the enemy come to them. The French were helpless and blind, sinking deeper into mud with every step they took. Only then did the English longbowmen drop their bows and pick up axes, mallets, and knives. They rushed in from the flanks, nimble in the mud because they wore light leather rather than heavy steel, and they began carving into the mass of armored bodies that could not even turn to face them. The valley became a grinder where knights drowned face down in the sludge. In the total chaos, Henry fought in the front ranks, defending the crown with his own sword. At the rear, the final 5,000 French levies watched the disaster unfolding and froze in terror. They had never seen their noble lords die in such a gruesome fashion. The French collapse began suddenly as those who could still stand staggered backward in retreat. The third French line watched the disaster and chose not to die in it, withdrawing without striking a single blow. By early afternoon, the field was silent, and the statistics were staggering. 10,000 French were dead compared to only 400 English, a 25-to-1 ratio that defied every law of medieval warfare. Agincourt did not just break a French army. It unleashed a longbow as the terror weapon of the age and shattered the confidence of a kingdom. It proved that discipline, environmental factors, and English steel could humble the richest nobles in Europe. At the center of it all stood Henry V, young, feverish, and unyielding, a king forged in the mud who reshaped the balance of power. This battle remains a testament to the fact that numbers are not everything when faced with superior strategy and the desperation of men with their backs against the wall. The legend of Agincourt lived on through Shakespeare and through history as the moment the underdog bit back with ferocity that redefined the concept of chivalry. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mud and blood of 1415, make sure to sacrifice your comment below and hit that subscribe button for more historical breakdowns. Now, take a look at this next video to see how the longbow continued to dominate the battlefields of Europe for another century.